Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Here's a cute picture of Casey Joe and Cody Ty, just to cheer you up because I thought it was cute that they were smiling. Anyways, alright, let's go ahead and get started on our notes for today. Today's lesson is 1.5 even and odd functions. So you learned about even and odd numbers, obviously, but now you get to learn about even and odd functions. So take a few seconds to write that down. Alright, so what you're going to do is graph both of these functions, and we're going to look at why they're even and why they're odd. So let's start off with this function right here. F of x equals 0.3 x to the fourth minus 4.8 x squared. So if you don't have your calculator, go ahead and get it right now. You're going to need to type this into your graph, and then graph it, and then pull up the table. Alright, so let's type this in, and whenever you pull up your table, and if you need to pause the video at any point, you can to get caught up. We're going to scroll all the way up to -4, and you should have gotten 0, -18.9, -14.4, and -4.5. And then if you keep scrolling, you should see the same values whenever we go into the positive x's. So now let's go ahead and plot those points. And you should get an image that looks like this. It's not going to show up on your calculator because you would have to change your window settings. So that way it's easier. Just if you pull up your table, then you can graph it from your table instead of having to change your whole menu window settings. Okay, before we answer these questions down here, let's go ahead and switch over to the other side now. And I'm going to do this one in red. So now pull up a new graph, and you're going to type this one in. 0.1 x to the fifth minus 1.6 x cubed. And then do the same thing, pull up your table, and then fill in these table values. I'll give you a couple seconds to get that graphed. So whenever you pull up your table, you should get 0, 18.9, 9.6, and 1.5. And then if you kept scrolling, you would get the opposite value of those numbers, -1.5, -9.6, -18.9, and 0. So let's go ahead and graph that left side of this graph. So this one would actually look like this if you extended out the window. Okay, so now that we have the even and the odd functions graphed, we're going to take a look at why these would be called even or why they would be called odd. So let's go back to the even side. So why do you think this is called an even function? Well, let's take a look at the graph itself. So this graph has perfect symmetry. If I drew a line down the y-axis, I could cut it in half, and the left side would match the right side. Okay, let's also take a look at these table values. So if I start at 0, 0, I have a symmetrical y value that matches up. All of my y values are the same as I go into the negative x's and into the positive x's. So it creates this symmetry in my table. So let's write some of those out down here. So what type of symmetry does the graph have? Well, it has what's called reflectional symmetry. And how does the table represent this? Well, it has the same y values for each positive and negative x. Okay, then last thing, what do you notice about the exponents? I don't know if anybody caught this, but if you go back up to the very top, look at the exponents. They're actually even. So this is x to the 4th and then x squared. Let me circle them if you're lost and confused right here. X to the 4th and x squared. So the exponents are actually even as well. They're even numbers. Alright, now let's move to the odd side. Alright, so let's look at the table values here and the graph. So the graph does not have perfect symmetry as in terms of like reflectional. If I cut this graph down the y-axis, the left side is not matching up with the right. Okay, what does happen is it's rotated. So I could take a left side and rotate it around and it would eventually match up with the right side. Now let's look at your table values. So they're close to the same number, but they're opposite signs. See, like 1.5, negative 1.5, 9.6, negative 9.6, etc. So what type of symmetry does this graph have? This is called rotational symmetry. And it has to be about the origin, or it's not odd. Remember, the origin is at 0, 0. Okay, how does the table represent symmetry? Well, they have opposite y values. For every positive or negative x value. So I'm just going to say opposite y values for plus or minus x. And what do you notice about the exponents? So if you go back up here, just so happens that these have odd exponent numbers, 5 and 3. Alright, so now you learned about even and odd graphs. On the next page, you're going to label some of these functions as even or odd or neither. Alright, so we're going to use a calculator to sketch a picture. Actually, I think it's already sketched for you, thankfully. Then determine if the function is even, odd, or neither, and explain why. So here we have the absolute value parent function. What do you think this is? I'll let you guess for a ticket. So just write it down. Okay, this would have been an even. Okay, because it has perfect reflectional symmetry about the y-axis. The left side matches the right side. So this would be an even function. You could also pull up the table values and it should have that symmetry in your y values as well. Alright, if you said even, you get a ticket. Moving on to the next one. What do you think this is? Even, odd, or neither? Alright, so write something down. And if you wrote neither, you would be correct. So don't get confused. This one does have perfect reflectional symmetry, but it has to be about the origin. So this is neither because it is not centered around the y-axis or the origin. Okay, last one. This graph is actually odd. So here's an example of when you could have an odd and an even exponent and still get an odd function. This is odd because it has rotational symmetry. So I could take all this whole left side and rotate it around and it would match up with the right side. And it is centered at the origin. So this middle point here, if I took the left side and rotated it, it would eventually match up with this right side. Alright, that's it for your notes today. Hope you guys have a great week and let me know if you have any questions on your homework.